Hey, ¿qué pasa, Calexico? Welcome back to the podcast. Like always, before we begin, I want to thank a couple of people. First of all, I want to thank Calexico Brewing Company for allowing me to record today's episode here. I really appreciate the hospitality. I also want to thank my anchor sponsors, Camilo, Jake, Edward Velasquez, John Cabrera from AmeriCorp, Eddie Lopez from Root Creative, Ms. Norma Sierra Galindo, Sergio's Tacos and Hotdogs, serving the Imperial, San Diego, and Yuma counties with Mexicali style hot dogs and taquizas. Contact Sergio at 760-562-0057 or look for Sergio's Tacos and Hotdogs on Facebook. Finally, I want to thank David Gastelum. If you're thinking of buying or selling a home in the Imperial or San Diego counties, make sure you contact David. He's not only a realtor, but an investor with over 20 years of experience, and he'll teach you along the way in one of the most important investments of your life. My guest today is a Calexico resident. He's been a city council member in the past. Now he's board of director supervisor for District 1. My guest today is Cachu Escobar. Thank you for being here today.
Jose, buenas tardes. Thank you for the invite. Happy to be here.
No, thank you for taking my invitation with a little bit short notice because it was this week and I reached out to you. Before we get into the meat and tomato, the whole being in politics and all this, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Born in El Centro, raised in Calexico, attended local schools, went to college in San Diego, University of San Diego, got an MBA, Bachelor's in Accounting and MBA. Had a successful 16-year banking career with a former Valley Independent Bank and then Rabobank. And then got into politics a few years ago, was elected to the city council in Calexico. And eventually I was also elected to the county board of supervisors representing District 1 for Imperial County.
Was politics something that you thought of being part of, growing up, or is it something that just happened along the way?
That's a great question. Honestly, no. In fact, a few people have teased me because they asked me, you should get into politics. I mean, you've got the financial background. You could make a difference. I mean, we need all the help we can get here at the local level. And I always kind of shunned it out. I said, no, I mean, politics for me is a little too dirty. Everybody wants a piece of the crumbs. We're not fighting for the entire pie, but for a piece of the crumbs. And it's very frustrating as you start growing up, you start maturing in age, you go from your 20s to your 30s, you get more work experience, you get more life experience. And eventually one thing led to another that said either I'm part of the problem or I'm going to be part of the solution. And that's what really led me to run for Calexico City Council and then eventually run for the County Board of Supervisors because I do want to make a difference. I think the Imperial County and the city of Calexico needs all the help it can get. And I think if we have the right electeds, we can definitely make a difference. I think it's just a question of getting that combination and moving the city and the county forward in that regard.
Was the county something that you had in mind since day one? And because I read comments, when you got elected, board of supervisor, people were saying like, oh, you only use city council as a stepping stone, which to me is like something that it's obvious that people that want to move up are going to they got to start somewhere, right? So you start from city council, but was board of supervisors something that was, a goal of yours, or it just happened along the way when you were in
again, that's a great question. No, the answer is absolutely not. First of all, I wasn't thinking about politics, but then I saw how politics worked at the local level, specifically at the city level. And that really drove me to, again, try to make a difference for my community, for my city, which I lived here for 48 years. So no, I mean, when I ran for city council, I was focused 100% on the city of Calexico. What really drove me to, or the first drop of an indication that I should maybe look at the county, unfortunately, when I was serving as a city council member at the city of Calexico, my daughter was diagnosed with cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma. She's currently in remission, doing really well. She's a senior in high school. But that really kind of opened my eyes to all the needs of not just our city, but our county, and how much we are suffering from both a fiscal and a medical perspective, and how I could really make a bigger difference at the county level than I can at the state level, really based on that. So no, it wasn't really, was I thinking about running for the county when I made it to the city? Absolutely not. That wasn't even it wasn't even an afterthought. But again, the issues that I had to deal with on a personal level with my family, with my daughter, really led me to kind of open up my eyes a little bit more as to how much more I could make a difference at a different level. And that's really what started the entire county political umbrella for me to move forward.
For those people that might not know what county supervisor is in charge or what's their duty, can you tell us, like in layman's term, what you do at the county as a board of supervisors?
Sure. I mean, in layman's terms, and we have multiple departments that are either run directly by the county or they're run by the county through state or federal funding. For example, everybody understands and knows what Medi-Cal is, food stamps, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So through state funding, we run those programs for the state at the county level. Everybody knows that the sheriff's department, I mean, everybody knows what the sheriff is. The sheriff is actually a county public agency that helps us, obviously, with public safety across our footprint. And when we look at the actual footprint of Imperial County, it's one of the largest counties in the state of California. So hats off to the sheriffs to what they do to cover and to keep us safe county-wide. Another example, is public works. You look at all the road systems in our county, obviously there's a lot of neglected roads out there, but the Public Works Department does a great job in trying to facilitate as much infrastructure improvements throughout our county in the best manner possible. So again, 3 simple examples. Public health, obviously that's a big one. Why? Because of COVID-19. Public health is at the forefront of COVID-19 as far as working with local school districts, working with local cities, and being the liaison with the state and getting the right information to the right people in an expeditious manner. So again, public health has been a great asset, and obviously it's run by or within our county footprint. Lastly, one I would love to mention, obviously, is behavioral health. As we continue to move forward, we see that behavioral health is an ongoing issue among our community. Veteran and not veteran alike, we have a lot of problems with behavioral health. So my hat's off to them as far as what they do for our county. And that is a county agency or a county department that is run through state funding. But again, that supports our entire community. And I could go on and on. The DA's office, the public defender's office, assessor, tax collector. Again, we can go on and on. Economic development. There's multiple departments that the county is in charge of or help support.
You talked about roads, and recently you were. It was a big thing was the traffic here in Calexico due to whether it's construction or. We kind of all know when we're gonna start getting that traffic because it's Fiestas del Sol, Christmas shopping,
Halloween, Christmas, New Year's,
Las Aguilas, all these things that we kind of already like. Oh, you need to avoid Imperial or 111, and you're making a push for having the east port of entry. Is it the east? Yeah.
Yes, Calexico East.
Kind of being open a little bit more. Where are we in terms of, alleviating a little bit of the traffic here in the downtown?
Just going back in history a little bit, all this is driven initially by COVID-19. When the government decided to not allow foreign nationals to come to our country. Obviously, they also decided to scale back the operations from a timing perspective. So in our specific case here in Imperial County, Calexico East, which is our second international port of entry, instead of having hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m., basically an 18-hour workday, Monday through Sunday, they scaled it back to 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Because, again, there was going to be a lesser need and to basically control the spread of the pandemic, the spread of COVID-19. Again, I completely understand. And just for the record, I do want to mention that we have a wonderful working relationship with local CBP officials, be it Sergio Beltran, the officer in charge, David Salazar, or Pete Flores, who's the regional director, and Marisich, who's the second in command at the regional level. Great working relationship. We meet on a consistent basis, and we're working together to try to solve some of these issues. But as the pandemic continued month over month and then year over year, because we're in month 19 of our pandemic, we found it of essence to really look at how we're operating Calexico East. And again, the justification for Calexico East closing at 2 p.m. Monday through Sunday is no longer there. And the traffic congestion that's affecting the city of Calexico from both in road rage perspective and EMS perspective. Again, you have an emergency, you've got a police car or you've got an ambulance going from the east side of Calexico to the west side. Your trip might take 30, 35 minutes. And that's just reality. It's not exaggeration by any stretch of the imagination. So what happens there is a life can be lost because instead of getting there in 5 minutes, 7 minutes, we're getting there in 25, 30, 35 minutes. That's not safe. That's not fair for our community. And again, it has a solution. If we can decongest all this traffic at Calexico West, we can definitely make a difference and maybe save a life. And I think that's really the focal point, that we need to really disseminate this traffic and let Calexico East open up. If not from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m., which was a previous operation, at least from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., which would include 2 shifts, 2 8-hour shifts, 6 to 2 and 2 to 10, which should really alleviate the traffic, road rage, and obviously the potential for tragedies to occur on the Calexico West side.
And it's that peak hour, right? Like from 6 to 9. That normally that's when we get all this traffic down here on Imperial and 111. And
it's a multi-tiered problem. It's not all CBP and Calexico East related, although that is the root of the cause. You also have at times the Mexican port of entry only having 2 or 3 lanes open, which again causes some problems. We have had very fruitful meetings with the new Mexican administrator for customs very recently, and we have noticed change. The past 48 hours, it's been night and day. So we're hoping that continues, and we seem to have his full cooperation in that regard. Another issue is obviously GSA. Calexico West is going from 10 lanes to 16 lanes. Fortunately, that project is delayed until roughly December of 2023. So the construction and the bottlenecks that the construction unfortunately delivers to Calexico and to the transients is obviously an issue that we will continue to have to manage. And then also because of that project, Caltrans is working with Calexico in widening and making State Route 98 a little bit more effective, which is basically, in layman's terms, Birch Street in Calexico. And that construction is also causing significant traffic congestion. So again, it's almost like a perfect storm of situations that's created. Again, at the root of the cause is the fact that Calexico East is closing at 2 p.m. But again, if that could be solved, the other issues would not be as challenging to work with. But again, the root of the cause continues to be the closure of Calexico East at 2 p.m.
Yeah, and something I want to mention is that I gotta give kudos to the traffic controllers. There's really few of them, and they get the brunt of the people's anger, road rage, whatever. And it's they're doing their job. They're only a couple here and there. They're really shorthanded, and it's not their fault that all this is going on. And if people, I feel like if people were a little bit more like follow the rules, made line the way you're supposed to make line, it wouldn't be as hectic as it sometimes can get, and sometimes they get yelled at or whatnot because they don't let people pass or whatever. But
well, you bring up a good point, Jose, and we hats off to them, because not only are they just doing their job, they're doing their job in triple-digit weather. We're in October and still hitting 100 degrees. So, hats off to them, because they do deal with angry people. And again, I'm not necessarily just justifying the fact of the angry people, because they also have a point. Let's just do a very simple scenario here. Somebody gets to work, lives in Mexicali, comes to work legally in the U.S., does not have Sentry or Global, so they're basically waiting for an hour and a half, 2 hour border wait. So they're up at 5, they're at the border at 6, they cross at 8, they do their 8 to 5 shift, they get out at 5:30. Maybe they're working at the beef plant in Brawley. They come down, that's a half-hour drive both ways, and then they have to be in line for an hour and a half or 2 hours. Yeah. So their day is compromised of a 2-hour border wait, a 1 hour commute back and forth once they cross over, and then another 2-hour border wait. So that's 5 hours right there, and they still haven't gotten home.
Yeah.
So again, that's where the road rage comes into play. That's where the potential for somebody just going all out ballistic and literally taking out a gun and starting to shoot people. I mean, there's a lot of issues that could potentially harm our community. And that's what we need to be careful. And that's the reason why I really pushed our county board of supervisors to draft a letter and send it to our federal elected officials, Congressman Vargas and Senators Feinstein and Padilla, to really look at this and work with CBP at the Washington level, at the highest level possible, to really look at Calexico East and the hours of operation, because we can't continue to operate this way. And again, if we're waiting for the port of entry to allow foreign nationals to come into the U.S., I mean, we might still be waiting for 3, 4, 6 months because we don't have any definitive answer on that. So again, we need to push for Calexico East to be open at a much later time, or extended hours for Calexico East. Again, it's of imminent importance for us here locally.
Saying it with the topic of roads and stuff like that, how long does District 1's or the county's jurisdiction when it comes to like back roads here in Calexico, like say Bowker, Jasper, all these roads, are they part of the city of Calexico or are they part of the county?
On the north side, the city line is drawn on Jasper Road. Jasper Road is a very, very neglected road. What we've been working on at the Public Works Department and working with our city manager, Mr. Figueroa, is working on repaving Jasper Road. And eventually, once it's repaved, giving it to the city of Calexico. So right now, it's technically a 50-50 split. Once that road is repaved and redone, then it will be given to the city of Calexico as far as their jurisdiction moving forward. But again, that is really a neglected road that we need to work on. As far as Bach Road is concerned, which that Bach Road would be to the east of Calexico, that's another neglected road. It is on Public Works master plan for it to be repaved in certain sections because, again, it is really, really bad. And then going to on the west side of Calexico, we've got Clark Road, which basically, if you go north, eventually becomes 8th Street. That's also in certain sections very, very poor conditions, and that's also, in fact, that's going to be priority 1. That's the one that's already going to be being worked on very soon. So again, multiple projects, not necessarily within the city's jurisdiction, but that affect the city's footprint, because a lot of people travel from the city of Calexico to and from utilizing those roads.
Yeah, especially like we mentioned, the traffic here on 111, people tend to take those roads just to avoid that area. So yeah, and I mentioned it because my wife travels through Belcour a lot, so I get a lot of the
complaints. Yeah, no, and don't get me wrong, I traveled quite a bit, and in fact, I was the one that really pushed our public works director to really include Bach Road and get together with the city of Calexico and trying to make a difference when it comes to Jasper, because it's 50% mine and 50% yours. We got to solve it. I mean, okay, we got to fix it, and then let's negotiate what we can do moving forward. And again, I think what's going to happen is we're going to fix it, and then we're going to basically, quote unquote, donate it to the city of Calexico and have it be completely owned instead of a 50-50 split, which always creates a lot of havoc when it comes to, hey, well, who's going to do the maintenance? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that?
Yeah. And in terms of, when you ran, even before you got elected, did you ever think you were going to be, in the county during a global pandemic, during, all this stuff that happened during the pandemic with, Black Lives Matter, all the minorities issues? Like, did you ever feel like or think you would be part of this? This board in all these troubling times? Well,
as I have, first of all, the answer is no, absolutely. But I'm a father of 3 girls, very proud father of 3 girls, and 2 of them have gone through cancer. Wow. My oldest one is in remission. She's a senior in high school, as I mentioned before, and my middle one is a freshman in high school, and she's technically still going through chemotherapy. Hopefully, within this year, she will be done, and everything indicates that she will be okay. But as a father, you always worry about that situation. So when we talk about the county and the pandemic, dealing with cancer kind of prepares you to a certain extent for making sure that you're taking care of your family. But when you're a representative, when you're elected official, you can't just look at, in this case, a family of 5, my wife and my 3 kids. You got to look, if not globally, regionally. Because when I look at my family from a political perspective, I look at my family of roughly 180,000 fold. Why? Because that's the population roughly of Imperial County. And that's the people that I am elected to protect, to guide, to lead. And it's important that I don't lose the fact of I may piss people off, but as long as I'm making the right decision based on their safety, based on their future, that gives me peace of mind. And when it comes to the pandemic and COVID-19, you always want to err on the side of conservatism. And what does that mean? That means, for example, if I need to wear a mask, I'll wear a mask, even though I don't want to wear a mask, even though I hate masks. Why? Because that mask might save somebody's life. And again, that's been my viewpoint from a mask perspective all along. Do I like mask mandates? Absolutely not. Do I think they take away from our learning capabilities, our friendships, or just on speaking terms alone? Do they pose a barrier? Absolutely. And could we have those barriers eliminated without a mask? Absolutely. But again, if wearing that mask is going to save a life, I'm willing to sacrifice in the short term for us to move this forward and for us to save lives. Yeah. It's a simple example on COVID-19.
Yeah, and that's something that you guys voted on. Was it this week? To keep the mask mandate
on a temporary basis. Again, the issue on the mask mandate is the only area that we really voted on is in public settings, indoor. Instead of having it be an option for vaccinated individuals, it is really something that would be required for vaccinated individuals. And again, the reason for that is very clear. The Delta variant of COVID-19 is increasing in our valley, and our hospitalization, our beds availability, just the overall infrastructure when it comes to hospitals, attending individuals and making sure that everybody is getting the proper treatment is very challenging, especially for the very serious. We saw that in the summer. We saw that in the other peak, which was in December, January of 2020, 2021. And in the initial peak, which was March, April, of 2020. And the problem here is we can't be overly aggressive when it comes to taking those mask mandates off because of our limited infrastructure when it comes to healthcare. We have 2 small hospitals to attend the entire population. I mean, you look at helicopters taking people out of this area for COVID-19 or non-COVID-19 related medical reasons over the hill to San Diego, to other areas. San Diego's already said, we don't want you guys. I mean, we can barely handle what we have now. Yeah. So we need to be very careful and very cognizant about that fact. So again, it always goes back to trying to make the right decision, which isn't easy sometimes. Not easy at all, because I know there's the people that don't agree with me or don't agree with the situation. But again, it's trying to protect the whole of the population, your entire political family, which is 108,000 strong of Imperial County.
And I'm somebody that, I wear my mask. I don't really, I mean, obviously I mind to a certain point, but, I don't mind wearing a mask. I think that even after the whole pandemic's gone, you'll probably see me, if I feel sick, if somebody in my household is sick, you'll probably see me wearing a mask from here on in the future, because, I mean, we see people from Asia that, they used to practice that a lot. So now we see now we know why they know what it is to go through something where respiratory illness is really contagious. So we would see people, visitors or tourists that would come here that would be wearing masks, and now we know why they did it. So I feel that going forward, I'll be somebody that is gonna keep practicing that whenever I feel sick or I have somebody near me sick.
And I think the problem here is, and this is necessarily on a local level, this is more on a national, potentially international level. When you look at social media in general, I mean, it's either far to the left or far to the right. And most people are really in the middle. They're middle left or middle right. Basically, there might be Republican, they might be Democrat, but they're basically more central than anything else. It's that 5 or 7% that is far left and 5 to 7% that's far right that really kind of divides us. And the social media just preys on us and divides us even further. And the mask mandate's a perfect example. It's almost become like a Republican Democrat thing when I just see it as saving lives and being careful. And again, the country is so divided. You look at pockets of people where vaccines are less than 40% of the population, less than 40%. So that means that more than 6 out of 10 people are not getting the vaccine. Vaccines are now in every corner of America, but they're deciding not to because they don't trust it, because of potential allergic reactions, because of potential secondary effects, etc. But then you look at the other side of the umbrella, and in California, we're very highly vaccinated. You look at Imperial County, our numbers are through the roof as far as people getting the vaccine. So again, it's quite a contrast in who's getting it and who's not getting it, and the justifications for and against. And to me personally, that's very sad because again, I lost my father-in-law to COVID-19. Right now, I'm dealing with a daughter who is going through chemotherapy. So to me, the health and well-being of my population, of my family, is of utmost importance. And when we have an asset that we can use, but yet the information or misinformation for or against is so widespread, that just causes confusion. And then what happens after confusion? It causes anger, separation, division, and that's where the problems lie. And you look at media, whether it be liberal social media or conservative social media, they're at throats with each other. They're literally wanting to go to war with each other. And at the end of the day, we're all Americans. We're all here together. It's all about us protecting the United States of America. And we don't get that sometimes. We lose that train of thought because we're so divided on something that to me is so simplistic. Keeping our country safe.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned, the county, is it like at around 80% vaccinated?
I don't have the specific figures, but I think over 80% have, or somewhere in the neighborhood of 80% have at least one shot, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 90. I'm sorry, take it back. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 80%, 70 to 80 have both vaccines, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90 have at least one dose of the vaccine.
Did you think that it's because of what we went through during, the peak where we were like really bad? We were on national media. Do you think that kind of pushed people here to, get vaccinated?
Well, that is twofold. One is, yes, we have a very varied population that has been pro-vaccine, which is great because it's keeping us safe. But the other important aspect of it is, and this is not necessarily, it's driving the numbers up, but it's not, and it's also protecting us, but it's not necessarily within Imperial County. And that is all the foreign nationals in Mexico that can legally come to the U.S. and obviously are also getting that vaccine and driving up the numbers. Perfect examples in Calexico. If you do the numbers in Calexico, we're close to 100% vaccination. We know for a fact Calexico is not fully vaccinated 100%. But who's driving those numbers? People coming from Mexicali, legally crossing the border, getting the vaccine, stating they have a Calexico address. So some of these numbers are somewhat inflated. So even though we're doing a great job of vaccinations, it may not be as great as what the numbers entail. But again, here is where the vigilance needs to come in. We still need to be vigilant about what we do and how we do things. Washing our hands, social distancing, wearing our mask in social settings, especially when we're talking about it indoors. But again, that's where the social media comes into play and where the division comes into play.
Yeah, because to me, like, I feel that within my circle of friends, it's only like a handful that I know that aren't. I feel like most of the people I know are vaccinated. I have 2 vaccines. I have the AstraZeneca and the Pfizer. So it's kind of like, I feel that, most Calexicans, but yeah, like you said, the numbers are a little bit
skewed. They're skewed a little bit up because again, we've got the Mexicali influence. But again, at the end of the day, this is almost like a subject that has no ending because there's so many people either for or against the vaccine or for or against the mask mandate.
Going back to being elected and voting, why do you think it's important for people? Because during the last the recall, we only had like 16% of the population voting. last election, we had a good number of people voting because of the presidential election. But normally the numbers here in the Valley aren't, great. Why do you feel it's important for people to vote and to get to know who's representing them, especially like somebody at the county, somebody that has a bigger seat? Why is it important for people to get out there and vote and make sure that they're represented?
Well, I think it's important for multiple reasons. First of all, you need to understand that at the local level, be it at the city of Calexico level, city council, or at the county board of supervisors, in this case, District 1, which is the one I represent, there's a lot of local decision making that can affect you either positively or negatively down the road. Mm-hmm. And I think the more informed we are, the better off we're all going to be. And the more informed we are about who is voting for what at the local level, again, specifically your city council members or your elected officials at the county board of supervisors. And again, this goes across the board, school districts, Heffernan Hospital District, IID, and across the board, the better off we are aware, the better off we're going to be as a collective community moving forward. The problem here is it's almost like the typical saying, out of sight, out of mind. People don't really care. They don't understand. They categorize elected officials as corrupt, as inept, as uninterested, or they're just here for a buck. And it does hold water to some degree with some individuals. But again, that's where what you said, Jose, specifically about getting to know who your elected official is in a specific district or for a specific area. Because again, the more trust you build with that person, the less likely you'll be to necessarily critique that person, and the more likely you'll be to basically constructively critique that individual. There's a big difference. Constructive criticism makes us all grow because we learn from our mistakes, or we look at the other end of the spectrum that we may not be looking at, because again, we're not perfect individuals. Versus just plain criticism that is uninformed, uninvolved, and for the most part has no information on the related subject. So it's just throwing tomatoes and onions at a politician, which makes, again, it's not going to make a difference in the life of you or your community. But if you can offer constructive criticism based on the fact that you're fully knowledgeable about what's going on, that is a world of difference. And that's something that every elected official in this county, and honestly in this nation, should be looking at. Unfortunately, again, as you go higher and higher up the totem pole, the less and less you care about your electeds and your elected population. And that's very sad.
Yeah, because I feel like once you go higher and higher, there's more more people that are gonna be wanting your attention or your vote. So there's more, exchange of
there's more influences, and unfortunately, some of those influences are not necessarily going to be positive for your electorate, which is the people that you represent. And that's where politicians need to be very careful, because as you continue to move on in a political career, you lose sight of the fact of who you're representing, what the importance of why you're representing them, why you started in this profession in the first place. And that's really sad. And you see that across the board. You see that in Mexico. You see that in the U.S. We lose sight of what we really started doing. And we really just look at the quote unquote the big picture. But that big picture, how does that relate to your local community, to your local elected community? It doesn't. And that's what's really sad about politics, that we as a collective group forget about making sure that we still are keeping in touch with our community, understanding its problems, and making a difference in its problems.
Yeah, and I feel that, here, especially here in Calexico, there's been instances where, we kind of vote for somebody that we feel is going to represent us right and correctly, and then they end up doing some, it's happened a couple of times in the last 4 or 6 years, right? Yes. So it kind of
2 or 3 years.
Yeah. So that kind of sometimes I try to trust somebody and then they do something like that. So it's like we right away we brush every politician with the same paintbrush. We're like they're all like this guy.
Some bola corruptos, and they don't do anything. They're interested in their pocketbooks, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the importance of people being engaged. That's where the criticism versus constructive criticism, comparison comes into play. Because again, that's just, if you're just criticizing somebody because he's part of the same bad apple, well, yeah, there's a few bad apples, but there's significant amount of good apples in that tree as well. And that's where getting to know your candidate. Where does he come from? Where are his roots? Where was he raised? What schools did he go? Who does he hang out with? Who are his parents? What did his parents do? What did he do? Did he go to college? Where did he work? What type of work environment does he have? What type of work experience does he have? How has he voted on in the past, and why did he vote that way? And can he justify why he voted in that regard from previous experience? So, I mean, you can definitely dig in a very ethical way on what your electeds are doing and why they're doing what they're doing, and obviously hold them accountable, myself included. We need to be held accountable for what we are doing and why we're doing it and how we're really helping out our communities. And again, in a general perspective, some electeds lose sight of that at the end of the day, we are elected to represent the people within our district, within our city, and we need to be fighting for that, and we need to justify every action that we make, either for or against, for those people, bottom line. And sometimes, again, we lose sight of the fact that we should be held accountable by the people that voted for us and by our collective community.
Yeah, and I feel that that's really important that they lose sight about what you said. Like, you know, it's more about, you know, the people you're representing, and sometimes I feel that there's not enough like interaction with our elected officials with the community. You know, they get elected and then, you know, you don't see them other than, you know, mixer here and there, or, you know, ribbon cutting, you know, picture in the paper, but you don't see them interacting with the community. How do you personally interact with your community to make sure you're getting feedback from them?
Well, the most important thing here is to make sure that we have open lines of communication, be it through email, telephone, in person, making sure that you take as many calls as you can, making sure that you're making the meetings and you're making the rounds, and making sure that you're in your community, understanding the needs of your community and how you, as an elected official, in this case for the county of Imperial, are working with your city officials on some of the problems that the city has where the county can support. Perfect example is, again, we talked about this, is border wait times for Calexico West, and how we drafted a letter sent to Congressman Vargas and Senators Feinstein and Padilla saying, hey, this has been going on way too long. The justification is not there anymore. And we need to open up Calexico East to increase the hours of operation, bottom line. So that's just an example of how the county is working with the city. And in this case, this is not just a city Calexico problem. That would be a county-wide problem. That's why we're working with all the cities and asking for their support in pushing that agenda. Because again, how many people work in El Centro and Imperial that commute on a daily basis? How many people work in Brawley that commute on a daily basis? How many people come to school legally here and commute on a daily basis? And again, it is an economic windfall. It's an assistance, and at the same time, with this traffic, you don't get anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's just one example. As far as working with your community, I mean, we can definitely look at what we vote on and what we don't vote on, and making sure that we're getting to the people, that the people are knowledgeable in what we're voting on and why we're voting for those specific items, what those agenda items are, and why we're supporting them, or in this case, not supporting them. Again, both at the city and at the county level, it's very important that we get that message out, utilizing whatever we can, be it conversation, social media, print media, news media, etc. Making sure that message is coming out as to what you're doing and what we're fighting for our community. And
the same with the topic of our sister city, Mexicali. Can you tell us a little about your, what's it called, this group you have, the board of, no, hold on, where is it?
The Southern Border Committee.
Yeah.
Southern Border Committee was created a few years ago at my behest by the County Board of Supervisors. It was piggybacked on a couple of different advisory committees that they have in the North End, as well as in the Heber area and even in the Ocotillo area of the county. But I wanted to give it a little bit different dynamic. And what I did is I basically called upon elected officials of some of the different districts that represent the city of Calexico. For example, we have council members, we have our city manager, we have representatives from the Heffernan Hospital District, representatives from Calexico Unified School District, from ICOE, from Imperial Valley Board of Trustees. I'm sure I'm missing a couple others. We have representatives from Officer Ben Hueso's office, from Congressman Vargas's office. So it's really a collective group of either elected officials, community stakeholders, or individuals that work for elected officials at the state and federal level. And the reason to bring these individuals in collectively is to really try to make a difference, to make Calexico better. It's never been tried before. Obviously, the IED is represented as well as a few others that I may have failed to mention. Mm-hmm. But the collective group is really there to really inform to a much greater degree of what is happening in Calexico, of some of the problems that need to be tackled in Calexico, and what we can do, again, as elected officials, community stakeholders, or representatives of state or federal officials, what we can do collectively to change the parameters of how we're working it or how we're tackling the specific issue at hand. So again, it's a dynamic group. It's really there to make a difference in Calexico. COVID-19 didn't help, so we had to kind of put it on pause. We're back running at full strength. And it is, again, something to really make Calexico a better place for everybody and to really tackle some of the issues at a much larger scale. Perfect example is within that group is how the idea came about that we really needed to push this, not from a CBP perspective, and this is the border wait times, not from a CBP perspective and Calexico Waste being closed, but more so because we have a great working relationship with local CBP, but at the same time, their hands are tied. So what we need to do is take it to the next level at the federal level and looking for support with their federal officials. So that's a perfect example of how the Southern Border Committee has really been up in arms about the situation at hand and how we need to change things within Calexico.
Is there anybody from Mexicali that's part of the group?
No, this is basically Calexico driven. Okay. Again, the local school district, Imperial County School District, IBC, Heffernan, City Council, City Manager, IID, representatives at the state and federal levels. Basically, everybody that is willing to work or is represented by Calexico and wanting to make a difference for Calexico and make it a better place.
Okay. I had a question that I wanted to ask in the beginning, but I kind of forgot. Where does Cachu come from?
That's an interesting question, non-political question. Yeah. My name is Jesus Eduardo Escobar. Jesus, I was kind of a miracle baby because my mother was told she could not have kids. So I was kind of a miracle baby. After 7 years of marriage, my 6.5 years of marriage, my mom got pregnant, and then here I come, right? So the story of Jesus is twofold. One is my grandfather on my mother's side is named Jesus, and my father's name Eduardo. And then my dad said because he waited so long to have me, he dedicated to Jesus Christ. So there's a twofold reason for Jesus and a one-fold reason for Eduardo. So my grandparents had relatives on the U.S. side. So a typical nickname for Jesus is Jesse on the U.S. side. Mm-hmm. And they had relatives on the Mexican side. And the typical nickname for Jesus on the Mexican side is Chuy. Sure. So my grandmother, who was basically, there's always a matriarch, somebody that's like the boss of the family, let's say. So my grandmother was quote unquote the boss of the family. So because my grandfather was named Jesus, he didn't like Mexican American family members calling him Jesse, and she didn't like Mexican family members calling him Chuy, so she kind of invented this Cachu. How she did it, I don't know, but it stuck, and it's been there ever since, and 48 years strong. And I think a lot of people that know me personally would call me Cachu versus Jesus. And you get that quite a bit.
You use it when you run, so it's like it's in your flyer. So people obviously I think I've when I told somebody that I was going to interview you, then I told them your nickname. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I know who that is. Yeah,
it's like Jesus. Who's that?
Yeah,
Cachu. Oh, yeah,
yeah. And people, I guess people know you more. It's easier for people to remember you by your nickname. Mm. I want to talk about the Salton Sea. I know you've been kind of involved with. I know they want to. I mean, the Salton Sea is a monster within itself, right? But they've been talking about getting the lithium out of that area. Can you tell us a little bit about that project and how it would impact the valley?
Sure. Well, the Salton Sea is one thing. That's an ecological nightmare, and it's only going to get worse. Why? Because the water that's coming in is more and more polluted as every day goes by, and it's less and less and every day goes by. So the playa, or the actual beach around it, is growing, and that carries significant issues. Why? Because it's contaminated soil. So as it continues to evaporate and to reduce in square feet, obviously more playa is exposed, which those winds can pick up all those chemicals and all that yuckiness, and it poses a really health hazard for everybody surrounding it. The problem here is winds can take those chemicals within a 100-mile radius. 100-mile radius is roughly all the way to Yuma. Wow. So it can definitely hit us depending on how the winds are going. Mm-hmm. It can, I mean, if you do a 100-mile radius on the Salton Sea and all its edges, I mean, you're basically almost touching just about every corner of Southern California, because the Salton Sea is right in the middle. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's in the upper northern western side of Imperial County. So it touches Riverside County, it touches San Bernardino County, definitely touches LA County, and obviously San Diego and Imperial County, depending on how the winds are going. Mm-hmm. So that's an ecological nightmare. Again, that's one side of the umbrella. The other side, which is more specifically to what you're talking about, that's lithium. Lithium is something that's going to be continued to increase over time, or the demand for lithium. Why? Because we're moving away from fossil fuels. Almost every car maker now has at least one, sometimes multiple vehicles that are run sans gasoline, mm-hmm. or sans diesel, sans fossil fuels. What I mean by that is that, again, the demand for lithium and lithium extraction will continue to increase. But what we want in Imperial County is not what's happening with our fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are farmed in Imperial County, but by and large are sent to different areas for packing, packaging, processing, etc. So we lose out on those jobs. We lose out on those tax dollars. We lose out on that economic development. Mm-hmm. So what we don't want to happen with lithium is specifically that. So we're not just looking at lithium extraction. We're looking at the value-added products that come with lithium extraction, and the next level, which is the work in process. In a manufacturing plant, you've got your raw material, you've got work in process, and you've got your finished good. We want to be able to not just provide the raw material, which again is lithium extraction. We want to be able to obviously manufacture it or work it through a work in process and eventually get to a finished good. Mm-hmm. So we want that entire gamut of operations to stay in Imperial County for obvious reasons. To help out with unemployment, to create jobs, to create opportunities from an economic development perspective, and at the end of the day, for fiscal issues that the city of Calexico, the county of Imperial, every city in this county will gain from. Yeah. So again, that's why it needs to be a very, very targeted approach, not just on the extraction portion of it, but on the actual production and value-added services that extraction can provide.
Okay. And in terms of environmental issues, there wouldn't be any, effect in our army that might be harmful to us?
No, I mean, again, from an ecological health perspective, the two major issues at the local level are the Salton Sea and the water that is receding at the Salton Sea. That is, every day that goes by, it becomes a bigger and bigger problem and a much more expensive problem to fix. And at the other end of the spectrum, because that's on the north end, on the south end, you've got the New River, which is basically composed of Mexican agricultural runoff, and obviously wastewater releases from Mexico. Mm-hmm. So when you combine those two on the south and north end, and at the end of the day, the New River actually ends at the base of the Salton Sea. So it's all being sent directly from Mexico all the way to the Salton Sea. So those two ecological problems are not a problem, but a nightmare for our residents. Mm-hmm. There are some projects, for example, the state has stepped up to the plate. My hat's off to our local elected officials. Eduardo Garcia and Ben Hueso, our state assembly member and a state senator, respectively, because they really pushed and assisted us in financing for what we call a trash screen, which will be at the base port of entry as the new river is coming into the U.S. through Calexico, and a pump back system, which is going to pump back treated water from the Calexico water plant over to that initial entry point. So the New River Canal or New River flow through Calexico will actually be treated water from the Calexico water plant. What does that mean? That instead of us having one of our worst visuals and health hazards going through the city of Calexico through the west side, is going to become a jewel. It's going to be a walking park. It's going to be, it's going to transform the city, and it's going to be a jewel for our city. And what are we going to do? We're going to, again, at the base when they're entering, we're going to encase the New River and take it out of the city of Calexico. That is a state-funded program, or state-funded project, I should say. And obviously at the local level, from a management perspective, the ID, the city of Calexico, and the county have partnered up to maintain it. So again, this is going to be a home run for the city of Calexico. Is it fixing the problem? No. Because again, the issue is still coming. The pathogens are still coming in. We're encasing it kind of out of sight, out of mind. But 3 to 4 miles upstream, it will again reconnect with the New River channel all the way up to the New River, all the way up to the Salton Sea. So again, are we fixing the issue? No. Are we taking it out of sight and fixing it within Calexico? Yes. But again, at the end of the day, we do need a wastewater treatment facility on this side to tackle that problem so that we can basically finalize that issue within the U.S. and not have that issue be or affecting U.S. citizens on this side of the border. That is the ultimate goal. And that is a federal issue, not a state issue. Yeah. So again, that's another avenue that we're pursuing from a federal perspective to make sure that they are fully aware that this is happening, which they are. But not just that, but that they provide funding for it down the road. Yeah.
Something that's been affecting California is, housing crisis. In Calexico, there's really no inventory for houses, people coming down. I know City of Calexico was working on a plan for, to build more homes or where to place them and stuff like that. How's the county helping and kind of like streamlining any projects or helping with funds to, I don't know, maybe build lower income homes, stuff like that? Does the county have any involvement in those types of situations?
Well, as far as low income housing is concerned, the county is obviously involved in making sure that we're working with private investment companies that are working with either state or federal government as far as looking at housing subsidies or looking at ways to invest where it's a win-win for both the community and obviously for the investor. Is it something that's sorely needed, especially low-income housing? Absolutely. When you look at rents in Calexico, for example, a 2-bedroom apartment is running well over $1,000 bucks. How many people that are making minimum wage can afford that?
Even studios are now like at $800, $850.
And when you look at the population, if you're making minimum wage, well, you live in Mexicali, even though you have to do that 2-hour border way, I think it's in your own best interest from a financial perspective. So I think that's something that does need to change. And I think not just housing in general, but we need to look at the actual urban plan for our community. And for our community, I mean the entire Imperial County, because we can't just build one facility or a couple of facilities or one single-family residence complex. I think at the end of the day, it's about urban planning, making sure that we are focused on the entire gamut of operations when it comes to housing, and not just focus on one sector, but we focus on the entire sector, because the entire sector is lacking infrastructure. Houses are expensive as heck here in Imperial County. You've got a house that a few years ago was at $300,000 and now it's at $400,000. Same house, same location, but just the demand's there because, again, the supply is significantly limited. There's only a few places, I believe Imperial's building some houses, and I believe Brawley's building some, but it's a very limited amount. And then when it comes to low-income housing, again, that's an avenue that we also need to attack. So, again, I use the word urban planning because it's not just a one-off. It needs to be an actual concept for a specific city as far as what they need to do and how they're going to get it done. And obviously at the county level, it's the same thing.
Yeah. So we're almost at an hour. So I wanna, there's a lot of things that other things I would want to ask, but I want to keep it, like driving distance. So like a round trip from here to El Centro is like an hour, so people can listen to this, when they go to El Centro. But a couple other questions I want to ask you is like, where do you see Calexico, the county, like 5-10 years from now?
Well, I would love to say that with the exploitation of hemp production, and not just the hemp growth, but hemp production here locally, with the exploitation of lithium production, as well as lithium value-added services that can stay in our valley. Obviously, looking at the ag industrial sector and making sure that we are focused on keeping as much investment here locally that we can. As far as shipping it out, that's also very important. Obviously, looking at our logistics corridor and developing that as well with our sister city in Mexicali and Imperial County, really focused on making sure that we're adding value to it and bringing investment in that can stay here long term and create jobs. So I'm very bullish on our next 5 to 10 years, given our current opportunities. But again, we can't be selfish and territorial, and we really need to be open-minded and working together with the IID, with the County of Imperial, with our local cities, and really focused on economic development and job creation to get this done. And again, what's good for El Centro is good for Calexico. What's good for Calexico is good for Brawley. We can't be territorial on this, because at the end of the day, if the county's good, the cities are good.
Yeah.
And that's really a key focal point, that we don't look at fiefdoms and separate ourselves, because again, we need to be very open to development in Imperial County.
Yeah, and that's something that I kind of became aware during the pandemic, where like when we were like in the the heat of the pandemic, the hospitals were packed. I kind of felt like it was the valley alone, like we were in this ourselves. So and yeah, like if you look at Google Maps, like if you scroll out, it's just us in the middle of nowhere. So I think we really need to stick together when it comes to issues like those that not only affect Calexico, but will affect El Centro, Imperial. Like we need to make sure that we see it as Imperial Valley, and I mean obviously take pride in your city, but to a certain degree, where like whatever we do, sometimes it will affect our sister cities, and we have families in El Centro that are related to us and whatnot. So like I feel like making sure that whatever we do, it involves the whole valley, not only our city.
Absolutely. We need to be self-sufficient, and we need to be working together. And sometimes we forget that specific fact. And we forget the fact that at the end of the day, if we're working together, we're all going to be better off. But if we're working on our own, it's going to be hard for us to bring that project here. It's going to be hard for us to build that plant or to get the jobs that we want, bottom line.
Yeah. One last question, and I don't know if you've been thinking about this, but any plans for reelection or any going somewhere else as an elected official?
Yes, I did have plans to look at other options running at different levels, but I think really where I can make the most bang for the buck and where I can really focus on continuing the change and working with my fellow constituents, my cities, and my county is basically running for re-election. So that's what I'm planning to do. I think, again, given the fact that I have another daughter going through chemotherapy, again, it also set my sights on being realistic in where I can really focus my time and make the most difference for my community. And that difference would be running for re-election, which is coming up in 2022.
In 2022, okay. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, like I said, you went from city council to county, and I thought maybe, but hopefully in the future, that'll be something that you decide to do, like going.
I did look at those options of either running at the state or federal level, but at the end of the day, I think family comes first. I mean, I think that's a top priority. And then following family, I think it's really where you can make the most difference in the short to midterm. And I think if I continue going the way I'm going and really trying to make a difference for my city, for my county, and really focused on that specifically, I think we can definitely get a lot done. So that's why I decided to run for re-election and really try to make the best that I can do for my community.
And I feel that, when you got elected, it kind of said a lot about you, because you beat somebody that was, had been in that position for quite a while, right? Somebody that Mr. Renison was somebody that had
Yeah, Mr. John Renison, Supervisor John Renison, he was at the City Council for 12 years, and then he was at the County Board of Supervisors for 8 years. So it was definitely an uphill battle, and I really respect him for that. I respect for the 20 years of service he provided his community. I mean, again, he did a lot of good things for our community, but I think there definitely needed to be a little bit of a change for things that we had already discussed in this interview. And that's why I decided to move forward. And I think there's still specific items, specific causes, be it economic development, be it job creation, be it roads, be it a focal point for Calexico and what the issues in Calexico are, that I decided to again, run for re-election for the County Board of Supervisors.
Well, hopefully we can see you here back in 2022 in November, is it?
Again, we still don't have the date specific for when the primary will be, because there's a primary and then there's a runoff. The runoff is always the first Tuesday of November of 2022. But we still don't have the date for the primary. But again, I'm going to be there again and working my butt off to be able to make a difference for my community. And again, I thank you for this interview.
Yeah, and because normally I try to do the when there's elections, I try to interview the candidates. Just like I said earlier, I think it's important for the people to get to know their, people that are running for these positions. So hopefully we can have you back June or whenever the
happy to do so. Again, I'm really proud and humbled for you to have me here, and again, just trying to spread the message of we're working as hard as we can for our city and for our community, for our county.
Yeah, for sure. Any closing thoughts that you would like to?
No, again, I just want to thank you for this interview, and if anybody needs to reach me, they know where to get me. All my information is on the county website. I'm happy to assist any individual in any way I can, whether they be in my district or in any other district in the county of Imperial. I really represent the whole of Imperial County, not just my district specifically. So again, I'm basically here to assist as best as I can.
Well, thank you for taking this time. I really appreciate it. I know you were in a meeting earlier, not in, you told me that you want to do it a little bit later, but I'm thankful that you spend the time today.
Well, thank you for the invite, and again, if you, I'm happy to be here once again. You just tell me and we're here.
All right, awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening or watching. Thank you again, Calexico Brewing, for the delicious beer and the hospitality. We'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe and peace.